The fire crackled softly in the stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the cabin's wooden walls. Nathan Pierce sat in his armchair watching his daughter Emily play with her stuffed bear near the Christmas tree. At 36, he'd built a technology empire that spanned 3 continents. But here, in this mountain cabin, surrounded by pine trees heavy with snow, he was just a father trying to give his 5-year-old daughter a peaceful Christmas. Emily's blonde curls caught the light from the tree as she arranged presents with careful deliberation. Her mother had left when Emily was barely 2, unable to handle the demands of being married to someone whose company consumed so much time and energy. Nathan had thrown himself even deeper into work afterward, but lately the loneliness had begun to feel like a weight he couldn't carry. His sister had been pestering him for months. "You need to meet someone," she'd said. "Emily needs a mother figure. You need a partner. At least try." Nathan had dismissed it. Dating at his level of wealth meant navigating people who wanted his money, his connections, his status. He'd grown cynical, weary of the calculations he saw in people's eyes when they learned his name. "The blind date thing is a joke," he'd told his sister last week. "Nobody actually meets someone real that way." She'd just smiled. "Want to bet?" Now, on Christmas Eve, in this remote cabin miles from the nearest town, Nathan was content to let the world stay far away. Just him and Emily, hot cocoa, and the gentle peace of snowfall. The knock startled both of them. Nathan frowned. They weren't expecting anyone. The cabin was deliberately isolated. That was the point. He moved to the door and opened it carefully. Standing in the falling snow was a woman in her early 30s, wearing a red dress under a gray coat that was clearly insufficient for the mountain cold. Snowflakes gathered in her light brown hair. She looked both embarrassed and determined, her cheeks flushed from cold or nerves or both. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she said quickly, her breath visible in the freezing air. "I know this is going to sound insane, but are you lost?" Nathan asked, concerned. "Do you need help?" "No, well, yes. Sort of." She laughed, a sound caught between anxiety and humor. "My name is Allison Reed. Your sister Jennifer is my friend. She told me you were up here and she dared me to come knock on your door." Nathan stared at her. "She what?" "I know how it sounds. I told her blind dates were ridiculous, especially ones arranged by well-meaning friends. She said you'd said the exact same thing. So she dared me, actually bet me $50, that I wouldn't drive up here and introduce myself." Allison shivered. "In my defense, I didn't think it through very well. I'm not exactly dressed for a mountain winter." Despite himself, Nathan felt a smile tugging at his lips. "You drove all the way up here on a dare?" "To prove a point about how absurd blind dates are," Allison said, now clearly freezing. "Which I'm realizing now may have backfired, because this is definitely the most absurd thing I've ever done." Emily appeared at Nathan's side, peering up at the shivering woman with curious eyes. "Daddy, she's cold." The simple observation broke through Nathan's surprise. "Come inside before you freeze. We can figure out the rest once you're warm." Allison stepped gratefully into the cabin's warmth. As Nathan closed the door behind her, she took in the cozy scene, the fireplace, the tree, the little girl watching her with interest. "I really am sorry," Allison said. "Jennifer swore you'd find this funny. I'm starting to suspect she set both of us up." Nathan brought her a blanket and gestured to a chair near the fire. "That sounds exactly like something my sister would do. She's been trying to get me to date for years." "Same with me," Allison said, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders gratefully. "After my engagement ended 2 years ago, my friends have been relentless. Jennifer's the worst because she's so good at making everything sound reasonable until you're standing on a stranger's doorstep in a snowstorm." Emily climbed onto the armrest of Allison's chair, studying her face. "What's your name?" "Allison." "What's yours?" "Emily, that's a Christmas tree." She pointed proudly at their decorations. "It's beautiful," Allison said warmly. "Did you help decorate it?" Emily nodded enthusiastically and began explaining each ornament's significance with the seriousness only a 5-year-old can muster. Nathan watched, struck by how naturally Allison engaged with his daughter. No awkwardness, no forced enthusiasm, just genuine interest. "Hot chocolate?" Nathan offered. "That would be wonderful," Allison said gratefully. As Nathan prepared drinks in the small kitchen, he could hear Allison and Emily talking. Not the careful, performative conversation of someone trying to impress, but real connection. Emily was asking about Allison's favorite Christmas cookies. Allison was asking about Emily's stuffed bear's name and elaborate backstory. When Nathan returned with mugs, Allison looked up at him. "I really should explain properly. Jennifer and I work together. I'm a graphic designer. We've been friends for 3 years. She talks about you and Emily all the time. When she heard you were spending Christmas alone up here, she got worried. Not about you specifically, but about both of you being isolated. So she sent you," Nathan said, sitting down. "She bet me I wouldn't have the courage to actually drive up here and knock. She knows I'm terrified of dating, of putting myself out there after my ex." Allison smiled ruefully. "Apparently, I'm more competitive than I am scared." "Why are you scared?" Emily asked with a child's directness. Allison considered the question seriously. "Because sometimes when you care about people, they can hurt you. And after you've been hurt, it's hard to be brave again." Emily nodded sagely. "My mommy left." It made Daddy sad. An uncomfortable silence fell. Nathan felt the old familiar tightness in his chest. But Allison didn't deflect or change the subject. She just said gently, "I bet that was really hard. For both of you." Emily nodded, then brightened. "But we have each other. And hot chocolate. And Christmas." "Those are very good things to have," Allison agreed. The evening unfolded in an unexpectedly comfortable rhythm. Allison called Jennifer, who answered with barely suppressed laughter. "Did you actually do it? Is he horrified?" "You are a terrible person," Allison said without heat. "And yes, I did it. And no, he's been very kind about your ridiculous setup." "Tell him I said you're worth getting to know," Jennifer said, "and that I expect both of you at my New Year's party." After dinner, Nathan insisted Allison stay since the roads were getting worse. They sat by the fire. Emily eventually fell asleep on the couch between them, her head on Allison's lap. "She trusts you," Nathan said quietly. "That's rare." "She's a special kid," Allison said, gently stroking Emily's hair. "You've done a good job with her." "It's been hard. Being everything she needs." "I imagine so, but she seems happy. Loved. That's what matters." They talked late into the night, their voices low to avoid waking Emily. Nathan learned that Allison had left her engagement when she realized her fiancé loved the idea of her more than the reality. He'd wanted someone decorative, accommodating, not the creative, independent woman she actually was. Allison learned that Nathan had built his company from nothing, that success had brought wealth but also isolation, that he struggled to know who really saw him versus who saw his bank account. "Jennifer said you think blind dates are a joke," Allison said. "I did," Nathan admitted. "I was wrong. This is the most genuine conversation I've had in years. Even though I showed up uninvited in a snowstorm because of a dare, especially because of that. Anyone can be charming at a planned dinner. It takes something else to knock on a stranger's door on Christmas Eve because your friend bet you wouldn't." Allison smiled. "Courage or foolishness? Maybe both. Maybe they're the same thing sometimes." The snow continued falling outside, blanketing the world in quiet white. Inside, something new was beginning, tentative, unexpected, but real. Allison stayed that night in the guest room. The next morning, Christmas Day, they made breakfast together while Emily opened presents. It felt natural, comfortable, like they'd done this many times before. When it was time for Allison to leave, Emily hugged her tightly. "Will you come back?" Allison looked at Nathan, a question in her eyes. "I'd like that," Nathan said. "If you would. I think I would," Allison said. "Though maybe next time I'll dress more appropriately for mountain weather." Nathan walked her to her car, brushing snow off the windshield. "Thank you," he said, for being brave enough to knock on that door." "Thank you for opening it," Allison replied. They saw each other again 3 days later, and then again. The relationship grew slowly, built on honesty and respect. Nathan introduced Allison to Emily gradually, carefully, making sure his daughter was comfortable every step of the way. Allison never asked about Nathan's wealth, never seemed impressed by his company or his status. She fell in love with the man who made terrible jokes, who read bedtime stories with funny voices, who cared deeply about doing right by his daughter. Nathan fell in love with a woman who saw him clearly, flaws, fears and all, and chose him anyway. They married the following Christmas, in that same mountain cabin with snow falling softly outside and Emily serving as flower girl. Jennifer stood as Allison's maid of honor, looking insufferably pleased with herself. "I told you blind dates could work," she whispered during the reception. "That wasn't a blind date," Allison protested. "That was an ambush." "Door." "Same thing," Jennifer said with a grin. "And you're welcome." Years later, when people asked how they met, Nathan and Allison would smile at each other. They'd tell the story of a dare, a snowstorm, and a knock on a door that changed everything. Because sometimes the most meaningful connections come from the most unexpected moments. Sometimes we have to be pushed out of our comfort zones to find what we're looking for. And sometimes the best things in life arrive unannounced, standing on our doorstep in the snow, shivering but determined. All we have to do is be brave enough to open the